she said. He'll always be more important than you. Now look where she is. This is the unbelievable story of a husband whose wife admitted her best friend would always matter more than him. I never thought I'd end up posting something like this, but here we are. So yeah, my wife straight up told me her childhood best friend would always be more important than me. Not equally important. Not important in a different way. She literally said he ranked higher than me in her life. That sentence still stings like salt water in an open wound. And if you're wondering whether I overreacted by filing for divorce right after, well, that's what I've been questioning myself about ever since. But let me backtrack a little. Maybe some context will help. How we met. I'm a 34-year-old marine biologist. Not exactly the flashiest career, but it pays the bills and honestly, I love it. I work at a government research facility where we study deep-sea ecosystems, creatures most people only ever see in documentaries or nightmares. Squid the size of refrigerators, fish with teeth like razors, glowing organisms that look like alien spaceships. It's not glamorous, but it gives me stories to tell, and I always thought that made me interesting enough. My ex-wife Jenny, 32F, was a veterinarian. We met about 6 years ago at a friend's barbecue. I was flipping burgers while she was laughing at some joke about mutts being better than purebreds, and somehow we got stuck talking about animals for the rest of the night. She had this easy smile, a soft but confident voice, and she loved puns as much as I did. That last part sealed it. We were two dorks who thought wordplay was peak comedy. One thing I learned pretty quickly, though, was that Jenny had a best friend named Sean, 33M. Childhood best friend. They grew up next door to each other, apparently shared everything from juice boxes to high school crush drama. By the time I entered the picture, Sean was already married to a woman named Laura, and they had 2 young kids. Jenny and Sean had that sort of bond that's less friendship and more like family. I'm not the jealous type, so at first, I thought nothing of it. Some people carry their childhood friendships into adulthood, right? Early red flags. Still, there were small things that rubbed me the wrong way. She answered his calls instantly, even if we were out to dinner, even if we were mid-conversation. Inside jokes I couldn't follow. They had references going back decades, stuff that made me feel like an intruder in my own marriage. Sean in our wedding party. She insisted he be a groomsman. I barely knew the guy, but she argued it wasn't negotiable. I kept telling myself, don't be insecure, don't be controlling. I'm a scientist. I like data. The data at the time said, Jenny loves me. She chose to marry me. Sean is married too, so no big deal. But over time, the little things started to feel like fractures spreading through the glass. The breaking point. Fast forward 3 years into the marriage. I'd been saving money quietly for something special, a trip to the Maldives. Jenny once told me, long before we even got engaged, that her dream vacation was to stay in one of those huts over turquoise water, watching fish swim underneath the floorboards. So I planned it. Flights, budget, time off, everything. I thought I was being the most thoughtful husband ever. When I told her, she didn't smile. She didn't squeal in excitement. She frowned. Actually, she said, I was thinking we could go camping instead. Sean and Laura are planning a trip with their kids, and it would be fun to accidentally run into them at the same campground. I blinked at her. Camping? Instead of the Maldives? You've been dreaming of that trip for years. Yeah, but we can go there anytime, she shrugged. This way, we get to hang out with Sean and Laura too. That was the first time I felt something inside me snap. I said carefully, Jenny, we see them all the time. They live 20 minutes away. But this trip? This was meant to be just us. A once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing. Her face tightened, defensive. You're being selfish. Sean is important to me. You don't understand. I tried to keep calm. I'm not asking you to stop being friends. I'm saying our marriage should take priority sometimes. And that's when she dropped the bomb. You need to understand that Sean will always be more important to me than you. He's been in my life since we were babies. You've only been here a few years. That's just how it is. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say she didn't mean it. But instead, she doubled down. Sean knows me better than you ever will. Our bond is different. Stronger. You can't replace that. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I told her plainly, you have a choice. You can be married to me, or you can prioritize Sean above our marriage. But you can't have both. She accused me of giving her an ultimatum. I told her yes, I absolutely am. She packed a bag and went to her sister's house. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. Aftermath of the ultimatum. Jenny thought I'd cave. She told me I'd come crawling back once I realized how good I had it. She was wrong. Our divorce was relatively clean. We didn't have kids, finances were mostly separate, and the house went up for sale. But the emotional wreckage? That was a whole different battlefield. And this is where people always ask, wasn't there a chance of counseling? Couldn't you work it out? Here's the thing. When your spouse tells you you'll never be their top priority, no therapist in the world can fix that. What's a counselor supposed to do? Convince her to lie? No. For me, that was the end. The divorce itself. The divorce went through fast. Barely 3 months after I filed, the papers were signed. Jenny walked out of the courthouse looking smug, like she thought this was just a phase I'd eventually regret. She genuinely believed I'd come crawling back. Me? I moved into a small but comfortable apartment near the research facility. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. No ghost of Sean hovering over my marriage, no constant interruptions during dinner, no quiet resentment eating away at me. And I'll be honest, single life wasn't that bad. I rediscovered the joy of eating cereal for dinner, binge-watching documentaries about shipwrecks without someone sighing in boredom, and coming home to peace and quiet. At night, though, I'd still replay that sentence in my head. Sean will always be more important than you. No matter how I looked at it, I couldn't find a way that line didn't mean the marriage was already dead. Gossip travels fast. About a month after the divorce, a friend texted me, "Hey, heard Jenny's basically living at Sean's house now." I laughed it off. She's always been close to them. But then the stories piled up. Jenny was showing up uninvited to help with the kids, buying groceries and dropping them off at Laura's kitchen like she owned the place, organizing Sean's files, even cleaning his office. Laura, the actual wife, wasn't amused. I'd always known Laura as polite but distant. She was the kind of person who smiled in group settings but didn't overshare. Solid, no nonsense. Now she was stuck with Jenny basically acting like a second wife. Lunch with Laura. Then came the lunch invitation. Laura reached out one day, saying she wanted to ask me a few questions. We met at a little seafood diner near the marina. She didn't waste time. "Since your divorce, has Jenny always been like this with Sean? So involved, so intense." I thought about it. The gifts, the constant calls, the way Jenny lit up when Sean's name came up, the Maldives fiasco. I nodded slowly. Yeah, she always treated him like he was the center of her universe. I just thought I was being insecure. Laura's jaw tightened. I knew it. I knew I wasn't crazy. She told me Jenny had been buying Sean expensive presents, calling him at all hours, even talking about finally being free to focus on the relationships that really mattered. That phrase hit me like a hammer. Jenny had said the same thing to me, just in different words. Laura sighed. I thought maybe she'd calm down after the divorce. But it's getting worse. We talked for almost 2 hours. By the end, Laura looked relieved. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't paranoid. Jenny really was trying to wedge herself into their family. I walked away from that lunch with a weird mix of emotions. Validation that I hadn't overreacted and pity for Laura. Jenny's confession. Not long after, things escalated. Laura confronted Sean about Jenny's behavior. At first, he brushed it off. She's just going through a hard time. She needs support. Classic Sean. Nice guy, but conflict averse. But when Laura listed the specifics, Jenny doing his laundry, leaving her shampoo at their house, cooking dinner in their kitchen without permission, Sean couldn't ignore it anymore. So he sat Jenny down. And that's when she cracked. Through tears, she confessed she'd been in love with him since they were teenagers. That marrying me was just her settling, because she thought he'd never want her. But now that she was divorced, she couldn't hide it anymore. Sean, being Sean, tried to let her down gently. He told her he was flattered, but committed to Laura. Friendship only. Jenny heard something else entirely. She didn't hear, no, she heard, maybe someday. And that's when her obsession went from inappropriate to downright alarming. Stalker behavior. It started small. Gifts left on Sean's car. Lunches delivered to his workplace. Then the truly creepy part. She somehow had a copy of their house key. One afternoon, Laura came home and found Jenny in their kitchen, cooking dinner like she lived there. Laura finally lost it. She told Jenny, "You are not welcome here. You are crossing every possible boundary." Even then, Jenny snapped back, "You're selfish. You should be grateful I care enough to help your husband and kids." That was the final straw. Sean told Jenny point blank, "If you can't respect my marriage, then our friendship is over." Did Jenny back down? Of course not. She showed up the next night, drunk, screaming outside their door that Laura was keeping them apart. The neighbors called the police. By then, Sean and Laura were seriously considering moving just to get away from her. And me? I was just watching from a distance, relieved that I'd gotten out when I did. Jenny's next chapter. After Sean cut her off, Jenny spiraled. For a while, she tried guilt-tripping him, posting cryptic quotes on social media about soulmates who can't be together, writing long, emotional captions about betrayal, even tagging Sean's favorite bands like he'd magically see them and come running back. When none of that worked, she pivoted. Enter Max. Max was one of those guys you could spot trouble in from a mile away. Flashy car, expensive watch, loud personality. He called himself an entrepreneur, but nobody could explain what he actually did. Jenny met him at some bar through mutual friends. Within weeks, she was posting pictures with him. Champagne glasses, weekend getaways, a new designer bag. After years of Sean quietly ignoring her romantic hopes, Max was the polar opposite. Lavish attention, love bombing, showering her with compliments. Jenny was hooked. The pregnancy. 3 months in, Jenny called one of her old mutual friends and let the big news slip. She was pregnant. Her voice carried that smug triumph, like she'd finally won some cosmic contest. She told me, the friend later recounted, "Now I get to start my real family. Sean wasted years of my life, but Max is the one." Word traveled fast, and yes, Laura and Sean heard about it too. Sean's only response, "I hope she finally finds what she's looking for." Me? I couldn't help but shake my head. Jenny always treated relationships like trophies. The idea that this baby was part of some victory lap rather than an actual child? That worried me more than anything. The cracks in the facade. Of course, the glitter couldn't last. Max was not husband material. He was the type who always had business meetings late at night, never explained his income, and carried 2 phones at all times. Jenny either ignored the red flags or convinced herself she could fix him. But soon, the lies piled up. He disappeared for entire weekends, left her to pay bills despite his supposedly booming business, and borrowed her car so often she barely saw it. Still, Jenny doubled down. She told anyone who would listen that Max was different and that people just didn't understand him. That was Jenny's pattern. Cling harder the more unstable things got. The arrest. The truth came crashing down about 6 months into her pregnancy. Max was arrested for fraud. Not petty fraud either. Serious, organized financial scams that had been under investigation for years. Fake companies, stolen identities, money laundering. Jenny, pregnant and devastated, had to watch as her dream man was dragged off in handcuffs. His trial was swift, the evidence overwhelming. He's now serving several years in prison. The lavish lifestyle? Fake. The gifts? Bought with stolen money. The love bombing? Just another con. And Jenny? Left high and dry, pregnant with his child, no partner, no stability. Rock bottom. For the first time, reality seemed to hit her. She'd burned her marriage to the ground, destroyed her friendship with Sean, alienated Laura, and now ended up abandoned by a criminal. Her social media went dark. No more smug selfies. No more quotes about love and destiny. Instead, friends whispered she was back at her sister's house, crying constantly, barely able to hold things together. Laura summed it up best when she told me later. Jenny spent her whole life chasing a fantasy, and now she has nothing to show for it except a baby she didn't plan for. It sounds harsh, but there's a kind of brutal truth in that. My perspective. Sometimes people ask me if I feel vindicated, like I won, because Jenny ended up alone while I moved on. But honestly, I don't feel triumphant. I just feel sad. Jenny wasn't a bad person at her core. She loved animals. She was passionate. She could be incredibly funny and kind. But her obsession with Sean, and later her desperation to prove she didn't lose, destroyed everything good in her life. And part of me still mourns the version of her that could have been different if she'd just chosen our marriage, chosen reality, instead of chasing illusions. Life as a single mother-to-be. After Max's arrest, Jenny's world shrank to survival mode. She moved back in with her sister temporarily, then bounced between relatives' couches. No one wanted to deal with her drama long-term, but people also pitted her, pregnant, abandoned, and humiliated. Her once active social media, full of glossy posts and cryptic declarations, went silent. That silence spoke louder than anything else. Jenny, who thrived on attention, now had nothing left to brag about. She tried reaching out to Sean again, playing the "we've known each other forever, can't you help me?" card. But by then, he was done. His wife Laura had made it crystal clear Jenny was not welcome in their lives. For once, Sean didn't waver. He didn't cave. And Jenny was left with no safety net. The birth. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Jenny had given birth to a baby boy. No one celebrated. No big announcement. No shower of congratulations. Just quiet acknowledgement. People worried about her ability to cope. Jenny had never been good with responsibility. She chased excitement, not routine. And a baby? A baby is nothing but routine. Feedings, sleepless nights, endless patience. I can't lie, I felt sorry for that kid. He didn't ask to be born into chaos. My new life. Meanwhile, my own life moved forward. Work at the research facility picked up. I got the chance to join an expedition studying coral bleaching off the coast, and those months at sea reminded me why I loved marine biology in the first place. The ocean was steady, predictable, vast and mysterious, yes, but never dishonest. Unlike people, the sea never promised something it couldn't give. I even started dating again, cautiously. At first it felt strange, going out with women who didn't know Sean's name, who didn't compare me to anyone else, who looked at me like I was the important one. I wasn't rushing into anything serious.